Good morning and welcome everybody to another program from the Coronado Roundtable. The sun is out and we're very happy to see everybody here at the end of February 2025 already. I'm Christian Escobar, the president of the Coronado Roundtable. But the good news is that we have a great program this morning, and that will feature the UT columnist and entrepreneur, Neil Senturia. We will start off the program with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if I can get you to stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As you probably know, our programs are recorded for Zoom, and we'd like to thank again the Coronado Public Library and its staff. And this morning, Selena Valladolid is providing the services. Thank you, Selena. For those of you watching at home, please mute your computer or device, and please turn off your camera. You may use the chat box for the question and answer portion of this program, which will be explained as in two portions. The Q&A feature will be divided into two sessions this morning. Please let us know if you can't hear at the back of the room, and we will get into that. The coffee service, again, this morning is provided by Alex of the Malo Brew, the coffee cart in the front of the library, and we ask for a $3 donation for that. So help yourselves to the coffee now or any time during the program. We will not be having a normal coffee break this morning. Our own board member, Dave Bean, will be providing the introduction to our speaker. So Dave, would you please come forward?
Thank you, Christian, and good morning. Great to see you all here today. I'm very excited to be introducing our speaker, and I think you really enjoy what he has to say. You're no doubt familiar with him and his byline from the Union Tribune. Neil Senturia is a classic serial entrepreneur. That's his own description. He has had three careers, from writing sitcoms in Hollywood to real estate development, and finally now technology. He has started 9 companies, or served 9 companies as CEO or chairman, and another dozen or so that he has invested in himself. Neil is currently serving as CEO of Blackbird Ventures, a small venture fund based on early stage companies. He's also CEO of AskTuring.ai, an early stage company initially focused on helping the $14 trillion mortgage industry more efficiently manage an infinite number of documents and processes. And if you've ever had to file for a mortgage, you know exactly what that's all about, right? Neil has taught entrepreneurship at San Diego State and UCSD, and is currently teaching entrepreneurism at Donovan State Prison. That must be an interesting audience. Neil is the author of Captive Audience, but Neil's author of I'm There For You, Baby, The Entrepreneur's Guide to the Galaxy, and as we said several times now, authors a weekly column for the San Diego Union Tribune. I think you can usually find that in the Sunday paper in the business section. Will you please join me in welcoming Mr. Neil Senturia?
So it's a pleasure in the morning. Good morning to talk to such a nice young group. Very excited. I'll tell you a story. Here's in classic entrepreneurship, okay? They give you what they think the program is, and then what you do is you decide what you're going to do. So here, even though I know there's a program, let me explain what's going to happen. I always put my watch because I never want you to be unhappy. 10:15. I'm going to tell two stories. I'm going to tell a story about permits, and then we'll take a break. You can ask a question, go to the bathroom because we're all, and then I'll come back and tell one more story, a few more questions, and we're out of here. So we're ready to go. And you can ask anything from the Donovan prison or any topic that interests you. Barbara and I, quickly, how we started this newspaper thing. You don't have that many short speakers, do you? And I may wander a little bit. So it's 13 years ago. 11. So Jeff Light was the editor of the San Diego Union Tribune. And I was a somewhat well-known real estate developer. Whatever happened, he invites us because he's building a home in Ocean Beach, or I think it was Ocean Beach, and he wanted some advice about framing. It's crazy. We go to lunch, Barbara, I, and Jeff, and he talks about the newspaper, and he says something about, articles, and we say, well, we could do an article on entrepreneurship. And we've been writing it together off and on for these 12 years. And he said, okay. And we had to audition. We wrote two fake columns. And now we've had this, it's sort of like, be careful what you wish for, you may get it. We've now written 600 and 12 times 5, so about 595 columns. And we were still doing it. We love it. It's my bride, Barbara's my partner on that. Okay, as promised, two stories. You know what? I'd like to walk. Am I allowed to walk? But maybe because they're. Am I allowed to do that? That'd be great. Wow, be great. By the way, it runs on Mondays, not Sunday, in the business column. Thank you. This is great. I could just carry this. Can I just walk with this? Perfect. Okay. I like to walk. Okay. Two stories. Here we go. Is this on? Okay, good. So this is a little bit about entrepreneurship and about persistence. So I started a company called Deckard Technologies. Deckard was a spin out, not a spin out. I took 3 or 4 guys from Qualcomm who were geniuses, and we decided that we would work on really the hard problem of looking back. We wanted to create look back software, and our first topic was the Airbnb market. So do you have Airbnbs in Coronado? They haven't been outlawed yet? Okay. And you don't, so here's a question you'd ask the city council. Do you know how many you have? Do you know, have they gotten permits? Do you know if they've paid? In other words, do you know anything about that market? Well, it turns out in Coronado, it may be modest, but in the United States, Airbnb was a big business. So we built some software and we license it. Our customers are cities who want to know what's happening in their city, so they collect the Airbnb tax. Pretty clear. And in the course of doing this, we are mining data in Riverside. And in Riverside County, there were a lot of homes that were owned by Invitation Homes. Invitation Homes was originally Blackstone. And in looking for the permit history of these homes, how did they become Airbnb? We found out they didn't have any permits. Well, what do you mean they didn't have permits? Well, the model in 2008, 9, 10, and 11, the mortgage industry, Wall Street, 4 companies, in Blackstone, American Homes, Homes for Rent, and Starwood bought, I'm gonna get my number right, 225,000 homes. So Wall Street bought, you remember the foreclosure, 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, bought all these homes. And their model was ostensibly to buy them, renovate them, and sell them. And what they found was it was better to be in the rental business. Okay. So that's, now let's got to jump ahead. Got to watch the clock. Okay. I sometimes do consulting. When you come to my office for advice, nobody comes happy. I only get people who have a mess. They come to see me when they have problems. So a guy comes to see me and he's fighting with his partner. And I'm reasonably successful in getting him disengaged from his partner. And it turns out, what was the business the guy cut? He's in the flipping business. Huh? Well, explain that to me. He says, well, I buy homes and I renovate them and then I sell them real quickly. Oh, I see. And do you ever get a permit? No, you can't get a permit if you're in the flipping business because you can't, the time and the money, you got to buy it, blow and go. And if you get called on it, it's the cost of doing business. You know, it's like a parking ticket. That's interesting. So I learned a little bit about the flipping business. And you got to jump ahead and I start Deckard. And then I find out in Riverside that there's a lot of homes owned by, which were renovated with no permits. It's kind of interested me because permits ostensibly, well, I think developer, remember, I built 2 million square feet of real estate. So I understand about permits. They can be annoying, but there's a reason. They keep the balcony from falling on your head. They keep the crumps from breaking. There's a reason you do permits, and there's 4 kinds of permits that are needed. Electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and structural. You do that stuff, you should get a permit. Want to paint the house, knock yourself out. Okay, I'm making progress. So I am interested simultaneously. You have to appreciate the entrepreneurial adventures has multiple threads. I get a book sent to me called Home Wreckers, which is written by a guy in Silicon Valley, and it's the story of the mortgage crisis. When a lot of people wrote about it. There was The Big Short wrote about it. So there's books. And then I find a woman who had left MIT. She graduated with a PhD at MIT, and she had written her PhD on the sort of the taking over of the middle class of American homes by these Wall Street companies, the 4 primarily. There were about 7, but 4 that were big. And she writes this story, and I'm really fascinated. Now, in fairness, my wife and I are what you would call conservative Democrats, but say what a point being political, I was opposed. I was angry that America had been cheated out of their middle class housing. This is why I was motivated. Okay, so we're making progress. So I'm interested. Then I do more homework and I find that lots of these homes in California, as well as the country, there's 220, but in California, there was about 80,000, had been renovated with no permits. So now if you're in the business of trying to save your city and get money for your city, the truth is they should have paid the permits. It's not that expensive, but you should do it. And if you're angry at Wall Street, then you got to think really carefully because you can't sue for bad behavior. You may have feelings about it, cannot sue for bad behavior. But you could sue them for not getting a permit. I mean, you got to admit, this is a little bit out there. So what, you're going to take on Wall Street's biggest company, Blackstone, and tell them that they did the wrong thing and that they should have gotten permits. I'm thinking about it. And the software I have is really good. It's look back software. So I can go and I can find that in 2011, it was a 800 square foot something with 1 bedroom. But in 2014, it was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and it had a parapet and a pool with no permit. So that was good. I had data. I go to my company. You'll like this. Company says, you know, you're kind of out there. And furthermore, we thought about it. We're going to fire you. I said, I started the company. I said, yeah. Okay. So I get fired as the CEO, and I'm going to step down. I'll be polite. But as I leave, I say, you know what? I think this lawsuit's really fascinating. Would you like to join me? And they say no. No, I say, you don't understand. Would you like to be partners in the lawsuit? And they say no. I say, good. I'll tell you what. I'll take the rights to the software for this litigation, and you guys run your company. They said, okay. We an amicable, semi-amicable disagreement. I'm rolling. I'm also like, this is a little bit out there. So now I got to find a lawyer. We have a friend. His name is Len Simon. He's famous for corporate litigation, and he's wonderful. So I engage him, and he says, maybe. How big is this deal? Well, there's a lot of homes. Turns out there's 25,000 easy. Okay. So now you have to say, well, how do you sue, for those who are lawyers, how do you sue a company in which you have no standing? Ah, gentlemen, think carefully. So let's think about this. Because you do that, you read in the paper all the time. We deny your suit because you don't have standing. You're not in the deal. However, I'm long on lawyers. I have another lawyer take him to lunch, and he says, well, there's a little known idea called a qui tam lawsuit. QUI, second word TAM. What does that mean? You can stand in someone else's shoes. Oh, that interests me. So in other words, I could sue not for my own benefit, but I could sue on behalf of the city of San Diego. Well, there's 17 other cities that we went to. So now I got a possibility. I can file a lawsuit against them for doing the wrong thing, and I have the proof, and I can do it on behalf of the cities. Not that altruistic. I hope to make a couple of bucks. Now, turns out this qui tam lawsuit stuff, not so easy. It's not like you go down and get your will fixed or a corporate. Not that many guys in the country do this. It's kind of an interesting backwater. But there's one firm in San Francisco, big. I think it's called Cohen and Hoyle. I forget the last name, but they're big. They are the qui tam monsters. And I convinced them to come down to San Diego and listen to the pitch. And they listen to the pitch and they say, we don't do anything for less than 20 million. I don't think you have a leg to stand on. Okay, it's nice. Then Len and I go to two other attorneys in the qui tam racket, and each one says the same thing. 3 answers. I say to Lenny, one more, 2 chances left, that's it. We go to the Attorney General in California. We don't get to see the head guy. We see a junior, two really smart, terrific women. They say, this is really an interesting case because this is public safety. This is, we're not interested. We're very busy. Now I'm 0 for 4. I say, Len, I'll tell you what, I'm willing to agree that we're wrong. I'm willing to make one more shot. Turns out there's a firm in Washington, D.C. called Sanford Heisler. And it's run by a really smart African-American guy named Vince McKnight. He says, yeah, I could do this. And he's really smart. And so we begin. And you file a lawsuit and you say you did the wrong thing. And then Invitation Homes gets their lawyers, the white shoe lawyers, and they come. And for those of you who are, anybody lawyers? No lawyers. So there's a moment in the lawsuit racket, which is called, not summary judgment. It's the one. No, they wanted it to be dismissed. There's a phrase for when you go to, it's not a case even worth being heard. I think that's probably right. At any rate, they go, and that's the moment that really matters. And the judge says, I think there's enough here. We're not willing to just dismiss it. That was good. And then you begin litigation. So we say, look, you did this. They say we didn't do anything. It goes on for a couple of years. Here's how it ends. I'm right on time. And I remember, I'm not a lawyer, but my theme to the law firm is a simple one. It says, all they have to do is show me the permits. You know how Clinton said, show me the money? Who was Show Me the Money? It's a movie. It was Jerry Maguire. So all I said was, because the lawyers were going to explain, I said, you either have the permits or you don't have the permits. This goes on. There's some hearings. There's a mediator. I won't bore you. And then there's this wonderful moment where they finally say the following, because I get to participate. And he finally says, look, Mr. Senturia, let's get through with it. We don't have any permits. Oh, we acknowledge we don't have any permits. And then they have the great, because they're smart lawyers, but we didn't need any permits. We didn't really do anything. We didn't really mechanical. We didn't structural. We really didn't really. And, but ultimately, like all things, they settled. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal. They wrote a check for $19.9 million. My former partners, who I had invited to be in the case, did send me I think it was a small bomb, I forget. But I'm going to tell you the best part of the story from my point of view. I like persistence. It's what entrepreneurs do. Here's the part of the story that you will enjoy. As you begin the lawsuit, you want to get other cities to join you, okay? Because it's a kind of a class action type. It's not a classic class action. And so we go to 17 cities in California, all of whom have homes built by, renovated without. How many of the 17 said they'd join? That's exactly right. You're brilliant. 0. I said, no, let me try to understand this. So we're asking you to join because the more names you have on the litigation, the better the likelihood of the settlement. So you don't have to put up any money. Oh, okay. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is sign your name. No, I'm not interested. 17 cities from Los Angeles to San whatever in Northern California, nobody. So just think about having a spine. And it surprised me. By the way, each of the 17 cities were sent checks. So when the settlement, they get some, the lawyers got some, we get some. And 2 of them wrote back and said, thank you. I mean, they were thrilled to get the check, but you understand what they didn't say is, if you had been part of it and helped us along the way, the settlement would have been bigger. So that's the story of Invitation Homes and permits and litigation, sort of like tilting at windmills. And that's a quick one. So you have questions about Invitation or Blackstone or permits or litigation?
Okay, questions part 1. You explained that so well, they don't have any questions.
Yes, young lady.
Oh,
We have
right here.
2.
Let's do it on the mic.
What?
Whoa. Do it on the mic.
Oh, I'm waiting for that
Thank
question.
you.
Do it.
Just wondering if you looked anywhere outside of California.
I'm in love. So it turns out that there were 6 or 8 states in which they were very active. Florida, Georgia, Texas, Arizona. Great question. But not every state allows for a qui tam lawsuit. And so what happens, you had to line these up. You had to say, where there are enough houses that matter in a state in which, who allows you to do that? You'll love this. What's the second largest state that we went after? Georgia. Gotta love Georgia. There's about, I don't know, 14 or 15,000 homes in 4 different counties in Georgia. Excuse me. Good morning. California, sort of liberal, allows anybody with standing, if you can sue. I didn't need permission from the state of California. Georgia's a different matter. We go to see the attorney general in Georgia, says says you can't do it. Well, what do you mean? Well, I'm a Republican governor and I'm not going to do that. Well, wait, let's try this again. So you had to get permission to file a lawsuit. He didn't have to agree, but to allow to be filed, you had to get the approval of the attorney general of the state of Georgia, and they weren't interested. So it finally has kind of died a dog's death. You know, life goes on. We got California. We sort of held their foot. There were a few articles, but from a sort of doing the right thing, yeah, you should get permits, and not for the fees were meaningless. You know, the $1,000 for a plumbing, nothing. It was really the idea that the laws don't apply. And it was the flipper who explained to me, nobody cares. There's so much they can't, if you're doing 10 homes, they won't find you unless your neighbor, and that's the story. There were other states, and this is not my life's work. We decided we'd do something more productive.
Next question, RG.
We had a small case here in Coronado about 10 years ago. It's the cost of a permit, and it's not the monetary cost. We're replacing docks and 35 homes, replacing with in-kind, another kind of docks, and we appealed.
You mean like a dock for a boat?
Dock for a boat, yeah, in the cays. And we applied for a permit with the city, and it took 2 years. And talking about, there's an imbalance between those who care. Everyone cared who had a dock because A city employee fell through the dock. One of them that was so old they needed to be replaced. The urgency did not seem to be carried to the city, who had no interest in another place, and infusing interest in city employees or state employees is sometimes difficult to handle. And chief
How long,
city, the chief
how long would
city-
it take to get a permit?
the chief city engineer said at the end of the process said, yeah, we realized we took much too long to approve your permit.
My bride is too polite. She was on the city council, and one of her themes during her term on the city council was why DSD, which is called Development Services Department. Why does it take 2.5 years to get a permit, to build a pool or to add a second bedroom? It was, and the theme of your speech is really how do you instill a sense of urgency and importance to city employees who get paid whether they get a permit or not, unless they happen to have a 65-foot yacht who needs a dock.
Next question, Dave.
No, I'm not a plant. Neil, based on the results of that event, that lawsuit, have you seen further activity from other states that said, well, maybe we can make a dime on this. Let's press with our own case, and or have you seen a change in behavior on the part of those big developers in terms of their ability or their desire to get permits?
Okay, so now it's a great question. Here we go. When we did this, it was 2019. And so our technology was really very sophisticated at that time. The requirement for this kind of a lawsuit is it cannot be public, meaning you can't get an article in the Wall Street Journal and then sue. It was, if it's public knowledge that this was going on, you have no standing. What we learned after the matter, this is now 2000, I guess it settles in 23. The fall of 23, fall of 24, I forget. Oh, this is 25. What we learned is that what we did at that little, this is about time and timing, how important it is. Today, AI can do it. Our software is meaningless. It's essentially public information. So I got, when the settlement was announced, I got emails from Smith and Jones and McGillicuddy who said, well, what about, I know this, they show me all the data. But it was data that was created and found by AI. So the irony was, today you couldn't do it. You don't have it. It's public information. It's ruled as public because anybody can find it. What we had was very unique and nobody else could find it. And that moment passed. So whether their behavior changes or not, I'm not sure, but there's no more. We stood at this little moment in time. And I will tell you, for those of you who are young at heart and entrepreneurs, it isn't just how smart you are or the company or product market fit. There's always a moment in time, and it matters, because this time it's not as good as this. So you really have to recognize the power of time and timing.
Next question from Randy.
Even though AI has taken away the opportunity, is there a statute of limitation on between the time the improvements have been
Correct.
made and time you can file?
Each state's a little different, but it's basically 10 years. So sure, you'd like to make a living out of suing big guys, but after 10 years, you don't stand. It was just ironic. And this is a little bit, got to watch out for that. I was really motivated. I wasn't opposed to making money, but I was really angry at how Wall Street had treated middle America. I'm not that altruistic. I don't wear a white hat ever. And but the original motivation was they get away with it. And by the way, it's not just it. So they're across the board, people, events, corporations, companies, they get away with it. And you can only fight so many wars. So the answer is, at this moment, that horse is left the stable. There's no more, because the time has run out. They're not doing it now. And now they do it at a much more, they're better at it. They do get permits. It was a moment.
Next question, Jeannie.
I am so impressed with your presentation today. Thank you. I guess maybe you answered the question already, what I was going to ask. Have you paid any attention to current situations and permits, or have you just let it go?
No, what actually happened? Yeah, it was done. You know, I think there's a kind of moment. It's not on our radar. Barbara and I have started a different company. We are we kind of came out of, to some extent, it's still technology. No. One of the problems of being, as Dave said, a serial entrepreneur is you have the attention span of a gnat. You know, somebody said to me, that's a very strange trajectory. Sitcoms, real estate, technology. I said, I couldn't get a job. I couldn't hold a job. And, you know, I think my particular arc is not one that's pretty common. But I also think there's times I didn't want to spend too long. One of the things that we've done together and for myself is I'm really good at starting the company. I'm good at building the team, getting organized, and the first couple of million of revenue or whatever, and then I'm bored to tears and they should bring in a real operator. I'm not a 10-year kind of, I can't do that. So that's the answer.
Next question, Dr. Steve.
Thank you so much. Here I am. Something I'd like to join in with you on. Remember way back.
80-20 your favor?
Whatever you say. Way back when the Pintos were being blown up, unsafe at any speed.
Right.
There were just a few of those, maybe 7 or 8. Now there have been about 3 times as many Teslas that have just caught fire, and no one has done anything. So whenever you want to get together.
Yeah. You got to kind of pick your battles. Anyway, what we got is we said what we would do is we would talk for another 4 or 5 minutes, and then they get a break, right? Want to go to the bathroom or water or coffee?
No, we're not going to do
no breaks.
You go straight into AI.
Straight to AI. Okay. So any more questions about litigation? There's one in the back, young lady. AI and what?
No, she,
Oh, okay.
she's going to let you talk about AI first.
Okay, so we finished this, and I did get a lot of letters that said that. So, but anyway, I think what I liked best was, remember, I told you that I'd gotten fired. Man, did I get pleasure out of that. I'd gone to, the first company Decker had been backed by a venture capitalist in New York. And we said to them, Lenny and I, look, we're doing this, but would you like to, don't want to be involved. God, love it. Okay. So we said we'd talk a little bit, and you want to come up too? No, you're not. Okay. So let's do this. How many people in the audience have used either ChatGPT or OpenAI or Llama or Perplexity One? So this is great. Where were we once that nobody had done it? This is a pretty educated group, so I'm very impressed. So this is one of these, I'll tell you a story. So there's a famous writer whose name is Dan Kahneman. Anybody know the name? He's written 6 books, and he is really the father of how people make stupid decisions. He won the Nobel Prize for the study. He and Tversky, first name was Adam? Amos Tversky and Dan Kahneman write the story. They are the first ones who write about why we do stupid things. For example, I have a stock, it's gone from 10 to 30, and I have a stock that started at 30 and it's down to 10. So which one do you sell? Not everybody raise their hands. I say, you sell the loser and let the winners run. But what we do is we'll sell the winner. We need the money, and I'm sure it'll come back. Okay, so these are called biases. And Kahneman he's the best. He is the best. I've read all of his books, and one of them was like Choices, Values, and Frames. It's 700 pages. I actually did finish it. Here's 2 stories that I love. He writes about luck. And I promise I'll get to AI, I promise. This is about luck. He says, luck is real. It's a true force And the way he likens it is this. You stand on the railroad platform, and if you wait, the luck train is going to come through and you can get on. Huh. But you have to stay on the platform because you go to get a sandwich, you know, because there's no schedule. You don't know when it's coming through. You don't know where it's going. You don't know if there's any room on the, but when it comes through, you need to get on. I'm not sure, but I like the idea because people sometimes say he was lucky, she was lucky. There are backstories to that. They've stood on the platform long enough and were aware enough that when it comes through, you get on. So I'm a big fan of Kahneman. So that's sort of a tangent. We decide, well, it's the longer story. I'll tell you the long story, but we're doing okay. So how did we get into AI? Before I will tell you what Barbara and I think is that AI is like any one of a half a dozen, but not 50 moments in history that change. So there's the electricity, there's airplanes, there's iPhones, there's the internet, there's the world. There are moments, you know, Windows. There are moments that are transformational in our society. And when they happen, you gotta get on that train. I'll give you a great story. So I belong to a golf club. I play golf a little bit. There's always a guy at the first tee that says, you know, I knew about NVIDIA at 12. Yeah. Then you ask him, and did you buy it? Oh, no, 12 is ridiculous. It's hard to act on. We'll call it information, but it's hard to act. So remember, I'm tying Kahneman's how we make bad decisions and acting, and what Barbara and I felt, because we had been at the at the early revolution. She and I started a company in 1995 called Atcom. This was back when you could we thought you could get your email in a public place. And we built kiosks, we put them in airports, had a whole business. We then figured out it was the software, not the kiosk, and we sold it to Cisco. But it was a moment when literally you went in a hotel room and you want to do work, you had to disconnect the telephone to plug in the phone to reroute, to change the settings on your laptop to do work. And we figured out how to do something called iPort, which is a little jack goes in the wall and you get high-speed internet in your room. It was a change, it was a moment. We got lucky. I mean, we were good. We had great stuff. The technology team was fabulous. She's smarter than I turn on the computer. I asked my secretary after that with screen to look at. So, but we had a moment in time. So AI for us, sort of the end of our career, because this is 95, and we've been together since 93. We think AI is the sort of next transformational change. Okay. Now, it's one thing to know it. And so how do you take advantage of it? So I know there's something called AI, and I know that it's going to be big, and everybody's writing about it. And but how do I? Okay, here's the story. Now you got to go back. So in the late 40s, I was born. So what you need to understand is, oh, I see, and you had a Jewish mother. I did. And therefore, you'd be crazy your entire life. I was. So I have spent 31 years with the same psychoanalyst. I've been in therapy more or less 40 plus years, and I had the same guy for 30 years. It's a true story. So by this time, after 30 years, he actually wanted to go to business school, not medical school. So every other session, I give him business advice. So it's a year and a half ago, and we've sold everything. We're kind of, Barbara's busy doing a lot of things. And I say, well, I have to make a living. I want to be a consultant. He says, oh, okay. So he said, well, go ahead and be. I don't want to be. You just said you want to be a consultant. No, I don't want to be a consultant because how do you get customers? I don't want to be a consultant. Now, I told you that he had fantasies of going to business school. He started a couple of companies that have gone broke. And but you understand, after 30 years, I know where he changes his underwear. We have a lot to talk about. So he says, I started a company in AI. He's always been on the cutting edge. And I found a developer in Bangladesh who's helped me build this company that I'm trying to sell to lawyers. And he's really smart. Okay. And I could introduce you to him. Oh, okay. So he says, well, maybe you take, maybe you'll create a little chat bot and tell people who you are. And maybe you can get some customers. I said, it's a great idea. It's not worth $250 an hour, but it's not a bad idea. So I called the guy in Bangladesh. His name is Talha Siam. Turns out he's 21 at that time. Now he's 24. He's 22 and now he's 24. Maybe he's 21. And I say, well, here's what I'm going to do. As you know, we've written 600 columns, about 550,000 words, plus 4 books. I said, Taha, what I'll do is I'll give you all this stuff and you'll create a little chat bot. And then when people find out how smart I am, maybe I can get consulting a gig. He says, okay. And I said, how do you charge? He says, I charge $300 and $15 an hour. I said, well, that's ridiculous. I'll send you $1,000 and we can begin. And we give him all the books. And we create a little bot called unicornhunter.ai. So later this afternoon, when you're bored to tears, you go to www.unicornhunter.ai and it comes up. It's both of us, has a picture, has a little, you can ask it a question. Oh, fascinating. And the questions are fabulous. And the answers are words that I had never said, but they come from all the books. When you put your own personal material into a closed loop, the AI machines pull only from that. So short course here on AI. Here's how it works. There are a dozen, more or less, called LLMs, large language models. They are the ones that you read about that are the $1 billion that have been spent. And what they've done is they've trained on approximately 1 trillion words. So an LLM is nothing more than sort of pattern recognition. What is the most likely next word? In 2000, I built a company, it's very clever, on content management. And the guy that was my partner is now the vice president or executive, but he's the head of Android at Google. I mean, you sort of know that when you get smart people, do not let them leave. Let's talk about Talha. So it turns out he builds this thing and it's pretty clever and you get it into the story and then it comes in my voice. So you ask a question like, what do you think about speaking in Coronado to a bunch of young people? And the voice will say something, but I won't know what it is. Pretty clever. Turns out the real clever is Talha. He's really smart. He came in second out of 400 Bangladeshi geniuses in the hackathon. It was amazing. So then, well, you can't make any money with a kind of a personal chatbot, but next. Now remember, I talked about time and timing. You can see how this all ties together. So it's almost brilliant. Let's go back 6 months, maybe 8 months. I have a friend, his name is Eyal Leader. He's worked for me off and on for 20 plus years. He's from Israel, he's clever, he's driven, and I like him. He comes to see me and he says, I lost my job. He calls and says, I lost, and I say, well, come in, I'll buy you coffee. So this, remember, no agenda. So this says, I'm going to comfort. I'm in the comforting business. He's lost his job, comes in, we talk for an hour and a half. And finally he asked, what are you doing? I said, I got a unicorn, blah, blah, blah. And he says, the law firm that fired me, this is called the mortgage default law firm industry. There's 250 law firms specifically that do mortgage default. It's not like it's not Cooley or, it's a very special. He says, your software would be fabulous for this industry. Now, you got to be careful. It's a little bit like a chocolate ice cream cone, but maybe not with the cone. So I say, look, I've been through this before. I know, but you want to start a company. Tell you what, I might be interested in writing a check if you can bring me 3 customers in advance. It's not if you build it, they will come. I want them to come in the door. I want to ask them some questions and see if they really, and if they are really customers, in other words, if what you want to build matters, I'll do it. Well, sure enough, he shows up and has 3 customers. All of a sudden, we stumble into this company. We know a bunch of people, we put it together, and we've begun. It turns out we hired Talha, and then he's got 9 people working for him. Let me give you a quick analysis on how to run a software company. First of all, the most important thing is the 2 executives, Neil and Barbara, don't get paid. So now you're cutting your burn rate. You know, you don't have to pay somebody $250,000 to be the CEO. You can pay me $1,500 a month just to make sure I take her out to dinner. You don't pay the executives. Next problem. In America today, to find AI geniuses, 170 to 300,000 a year for geniuses, Silicon Valley genius. But in Bangladesh, it turns out that brains and genius is not only in America. It's unbelievable. The world actually has smart people in it, and they are as driven and demanding and focused as anybody in Silicon Valley, and certainly less entitled. That's a whole nother subject. And we build a technology team that is unbelievable. And we give Talha a chance that he's written an email. It's a little embarrassing, but essentially changed his life. We gave him some points. We pay him enough. I'll tell you exactly. We pay him $2,000 a month and a small bonus. In Bangladesh, if you make 24,000 American dollars a year, you are in the top 2% of all the people who live in Bangladesh. You have the same income as an MD. So you can appreciate this was life-changing for him. And for us, we didn't have to pay Silicon Valley. Here's the part that really matters. Best part. He's going to school. He's a number 1 in his class and blah, blah, blah. And he's working for us. About 3 months ago, I get the email. I kind of say, you know, we'd like you full time. He writes and says, I'd like to come and work full time. My parents want me to get a degree. That's a really hard question because you all had parents, you had expectations, and you can appreciate that. So I write we've become good friends, more than just a worker. And so I pretend to be the parent. I'm going to explain that what you could say to your parents. And he does it better than I do. He says, well, look, if I get my degree, then I can be a professor in the university at Bangladesh. And how much do you make as a professor? You make $8,000 a year. Oh, okay. And the money we're paying him, which is astronomical in Bangladesh, he's giving some to his parents he's helping them. This is fabulous. And then he says, essentially, that we changed his life, gave him a chance that he would never have gotten. And the software is pretty great. We have customers, we raised money. It's exciting. We're in data, we're good at this kind of stuff. For us personally, Neil and Barbara, you know, somebody asked, why are you doing this? You guys are almost over 60. We're 62 now. And the answer is, there's some ad that says, that's what I do. I forget where that comes from. It's a phrase on television. You know, it's what we do. We're pretty good at it. And this was that time it came through on the train. In other words, I wasn't interested, nor were either of us, in just kind of, we're going to open a pizza parlor, we're going to do this, or you're going to figure out how to connect your lawnmower to your landscape. I'm not interested. I only was going to try for something hard and in the moment, which is what AI is. So Talha leaves the university. His parents are quite happy. He's now he's the head of development. He's got 9 people working for him. And now he gets emails from all the other students in Bangladesh, which is a very unique, it's like, look, Estonia, Bangladesh, Bangalore, the Philippines, Colombia, the world of technology, the guys who write the code that makes the magic, they are all over the world. They are not only in Silicon Valley, nor are they only at Qualcomm. And they are really good. And all companies are using offshore development teams. But personally, he's got a real chance. I mean, it changed his life. I did one more thing, and I'll tell you because we're never going to see you again. I wanted to give him comfort because he was leaving the university where his parents, you know, he's obviously upper middle class. Bang, this is a highly educated, you know, his sister's the head of something and his brother, they are real. But everybody worries. You know, you make decisions. I talked about time and timing, decisions. So I said, I'll tell you what, if the company goes broke, I will give you a year's salary personally so that you know you will not be left in the lurch. And he was deeply moved, and I don't think I'm going to have to make good on it. We've got investors, but it's interesting. Now, let me tell you what the largest problem is, and then we're almost ready for the last set of questions. You remember the shrink. So now the problem is I have to speak to him a couple of times, once a month, and I have to explain to him how successful we are because he recommended the developer. Guilt. Well, Jewish guilt is something you can work on your entire life, and we are still doing it. I offered him, I couldn't possibly, but you know, if we're successful, I think he'll raise his rates. So that's my story of AI. We have it. It's called Ask Turing.
And Neil, we have the question.
1 second. Does everybody know who Turing is? Alan Turing. See, you all are smart enough because you've heard of the Second World War. My children think that, you know, the only word they know about is Afghanistan. So Alan Turing, of course, was the person who cracked the German code, and that's it. AskTuring.ai. Okay, a few questions. I'm right on target.
Yes, now Ava can ask her question on AI.
Two-part, I'll keep it really quick. Number one, what do you foresee for entrepreneurs to use AI for? What trends do you see moving forward? And just for example, 2025, 2026, because I know they're slowing down a lot of parts of AI is what like I've heard, I've read, because it was getting too quick. So that's the first question. And then second question, I work with a lot of teens, and I'm wondering, how do you see AI kind of changing the educational industry, college, et cetera?
Wow.
Thank you.
Wow. I'd like to do the second one. So this is a little bit, you know, Barbara and I are, tell you a quick story. So we're members of a group in San Diego called NUFUND, N-U-F-U-N-D. It's a bunch, 250 people who put together, ostensibly they invest in little companies. And the most recent company that they're doing due diligence on is a company designed to make learning easier. They're gamifying education. I don't want to do that. This issue of writing your own term paper and having ChatGPT write it, I'm not that smart yet, but I sound old, but I'm opposed to it. You know, I went to a high school in St. Louis, Missouri. One of the classes I took was Latin. Latin, are you out of your mind? I loved it. So this issue of, if you will, the next generation, so let's call it teens, or I think the challenges for the kind of rigor of education. I mean, I'm on a soapbox here, so you please forgive me. But I got a degree in college in English. It qualified me to do nothing. There was nothing I could do with a degree in English except I had 3 different careers and was successful. When we get a resume, I'm interested in one of 2 things. If you happen to be a genius in Bangladesh, great. Otherwise, can you write? Can you write, and does it have, not without spell check, can you put a subject, verb, predicate together? Can you write? And we find that, I think that's a challenge. So the issue of education and how it's going to be impacted by AI, the jury's out. I'm not smart enough, but, and putting the, the professor says, I can tell if your paper's written by ChatGPT, maybe. It isn't that you trick it's you, so if you look back on the careers of really successful people, there's this grit thing that people talk about. And I suspect this audience, you guys have been around a while. You probably have a lot of grit. You probably overcame things. I'm sure you were in the service. So yeah, I'm not sure how you teach that. And I'm not sure that AI, the risk of AI is that if you either make it too easy or dumb it down, you end up with a generation maybe entitled and maybe not as motivated. I'm in deep water here, you'll forgive me, but so I don't have an answer, but I do like the rigor. And part of this entrepreneur racket is, everybody wants you want to start a company. Well, that makes, what does that mean? There's classes in college today, now I'm really on a roll, where you can study entrepreneurship. We just had this last night, we sat with Andy Ballaskin, and he says, you can't like, you go to college and you get it, come in for a job and you look at your resume, it says, I got an A+ in entrepreneurship. Huh? That's not, I know what a surgeon is. I know what a lawyer is. I know what an accountant is. I even know what a welder is. I have no idea what an entrepreneur is. It's not a learnable skill set. You go and read about, I don't have answers to that. So I'm afraid that I've ended up being old school. And the irony of old school is we're running this company with a bunch of really smart kids and our customers love it. And so when I say running, in the old days, we were really the CEO and the chief of a, now I just kind of like, I'm not fixing the engine. I'm keeping the wheel more or less between the white lines. I don't do what I did 30 years ago, but it's a lot of fun and we like touring and we like what we're doing and it will change your life. And maybe not for the good necessarily, I think, but AI's, I guess the way I'd end with this is that AI is not something you can ignore. You may use it in your life to kind of, it's interesting questions, but for example, one of the things and this is, again, everybody knows this, the rate of change has increased over time exponentially, so that the time from whatever, the airplane to world, so the amount of information, I think, doubles every 2 or 3 weeks. And that means the amount of speed of change is discomforting for many of us. I'll raise my hand. You're going too fast. Well, you can't stop that, so you need to adapt. The rate of change is really powerful, and you're not going to be able to ignore it. I'll give you an example about our little company. So this morning we have the 8 o'clock call. I had the same CTO for 4 or 5 years. He's brilliant. When you speak to him, however, you have to allow at least a half a day, because he doesn't. I'm built for like no foreplay. Let's just and he's built for I'll get back to you in about a month. So today at 8 o'clock, he details the new product, the version 3 or 6 or whatever, and it's unbelievable. It writes its own this, it does a code, it has an answer. It's amazing. And we're nobodies, meaning this is being done all over the country. There's nothing magic about this CTO. These kind of advances in the power of is happening everywhere. And I will tell you, because let's be honest with each other, okay? It is a little bit threatening. Threatening's not quite right. I can't, and I'm pretty flexible. I mean, we've studied this. I come out of this. It's still challenging. But if you're just like, wow, you almost want to, stop the world, I want to get off, the famous movie, but you can't. So got to make the best of it. Right on the button. 3 more questions or you're done. Mr. Bean.
Yeah, just real quickly, shifting gears.
Sure.
Your resume talks about working with the captive audience at Donovan.
Oh, I'll spend 5 minutes on that. Yeah, so you'll love this. At least I will. I've taught and teach at Donovan State Prison in South San Diego. How did you end up there? This is terrific. How did I end up here? I ended up here because Bean reads the Union Tribune. He sees, oh, we got it. We've asked, I was number 15 for today. He asked 14 other people. They said, no, I said, you're available. It's okay. Okay, let's go back to 2013. I get a call from a woman. Now, I'm a big fan. I've written a couple books. Here's the first 3 rules on entrepreneurship. These you can take to the bank. First rule is you have to return every email and every phone call. Number 2, networking is a profession, so you should become professional at it. And the third rule is the rule for all time. It says you must go to all the meetings and all the events, in particular the ones you are sure are a total waste of time. That's why I'm here today. So I get an email from a woman. She says, my husband is at Miramar Brig, and they read your column, and would you come and talk to them? Wow, it's unbelievable. Sure, I'm a gal. So I go to the Brig 2 or 3 times, and I talk to about 40 of their inmates. At the Brig would be members of the military, all 4, Coast Guard, Air Force, Navy, and Army, who are kept in usually for about a year or more, not more than 2, who are in the Brig, and I give a talk. You get it, put your cell phone. It's pretty interesting. Then one of the guys gets out and gives me a call. He says, this was wonderful, it was fabulous. And so I had a little touch of impacting people who had been, we'll call it challenged, doing great. Remember, rule 1, return all emails. About 2 years later, I get an email from one of my Russian developers in San Francisco, Igor, and it's true, his name was Igor. He says there's an organization called Defy Ventures here in the Valley, and they do training entrepreneur for inmates in prison. And they're giving a class or a graduation ceremony, and you should attend. You got to say yes. Now, the time we go, you'll like this story. Do I have time or not? Yeah. It's okay. I actually like this story better than the other ones. Okay. So it's my own expense. So the prison event it's run at that time by a woman named Catherine Hoke, H-O-K-E. She is a force of nature. Short dresses, gorgeous hair. She's hot stuff. Not just that way, but she's got everybody. She's doing the program at Defy Ventures to change the lives of inmates in state prisons. Wow. And she's doing the event at, was it Lancaster? Oh, this is great. So I call a couple of my buddies. I say, we should do this. Now, this is known as, yeah, you talk a good game, but you are really kind of arrogant. Not arrogant, you're kind of clueless. So I say to my secretary, Nicole, can I take a train to Lancaster? Huh? What? So I actually call up the Metropolitan, whatever. I said, how do I get to Lancaster? He says, well, it'll take about 11 hours. You have to go through a bus to Los Angeles. Get this. The train isn't, huh? Now I'm going to confess that this is, so I got 3 of my buddies, Tom Tully, Mark Bowles, and myself. We're going to go to Lancaster. I'm not driving 10 hours in the sun. This is July 2015. We rent an airplane. We're going to fly private to land. They have an airport. Now you got to understand. So you're going to go into a prison and you're going to try to be helpful to people whose lives are completely, and you rented an airplane to get to Lancaster. I'm not driving with them in the heat. Just so you can appreciate the sort of mismatch. At any rate, I then, because we write the column, I interview Catherine Hoke before we go. She doesn't know how we're getting there. She's in New York. And I say, I'm very interested. I hear her story. She was this. She started in Texas. It's a whole other story. There's a lot that you can look up. I won't bore you. And she says, you understand I'm going to ask you for money. And I said, most people do. And so the 3 of us, we go to Lancaster. It is a powerful and moving event. So you have to understand, I've spent fair amount of time with Defy. I'm on the blah, blah, blah. And I cared. It was powerful to see people. And that's a whole nother talk. So the event ends. We don't have to get to the airport. We're waiting. And she says, I'm going to ask you guys for $500. And I say, no. Huh? No. But I'll tell you what I will do. We'll raise you $100,000 if you'll bring the program to Donovan. Now, this is a little bit, you got to get this. She doesn't know me from Adam. So wait a minute. So I ask you to come, you come, I ask you for $500, you tell me no, and then you kind of wave your arms and say you're going to raise $100,000 if I'll bring it to Donovan. That'll fund 3 years of the program at Donovan. And so it ends, just unresolved. We went on a Thursday or a Friday. So on Saturday, you know, entrepreneurs ADD, I call the guy who runs Defy in New York. I get his name. She gives me his name. I say, look, are you really serious? Because and he kind of, he says, well, it's Saturday. I said, yeah, that is. It's one of the days of the week. Do you work? And I really confront him because I can see how powerful this could be. And I say, I'm serious. I want 90 days. I'll raise the dough. You need to do it at Donovan. And he was a little bit suspicious, but he said, okay, I'm on a roll. So then I write a column because I have a voice. I get the column. I write a column about my day at Donovan, at Lancaster. And I end with, we're going to raise some money. Now, there's 3 guys went, and the 4th one is really rich, Facebook employee number 2. The 4 of us, we agree that we'll put up the first 40 grand. Okay, so I got something. And then I write this article, and we get a call from the head of U.S. Bank's, what's it called? Union Bank's philanthropy division. What was her name? Union Bank. And they say, okay, I'm in. That's 50 grand. So I'm over at 90. We only got 30 more to go. And then the most amazing thing happens. We get checks from people we've never met or heard of who had read the article. So it was astounding. And there it was, $120,000. It was, and that really created the program. It's been there for years. It stopped for 2.5 years during COVID. It's back. I teach there twice a semester. And in May is the graduation. I'll tell you, I'm going to end with this. Last part, you'll love this. At least I do. So they have an event called Step to the Line, in which you kind of see what they are. And then there's this moment where you get to meet personally some of the felons. And by this time, this is the 2nd or 3rd time I'd done this. Not that I was famous, but I was well known. I mean, oh, you're back. I mean, nobody comes back. So I just... Barbara was hoping maybe that they'd have me keep me overnight. So there's a guy in front of me, large black man. He has one tooth. He smiles, one tooth. And he says to me, you know, I pray for you every night. I think of what you've done. Now, if you don't think, let me just see if I can understand this. You have one tooth. I'm going home, you're going back to your cell, and you pray for me. So I know that after all the bullshit I've given you today, that you can touch people, and that really mattered. So of all the things we've done, that moment where you're praying for me is like, wow. So we're connected to Donovan, we helped them, and I believe in it. And that's the end of it. That's the felon story.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Senturia.
Thank you.
Fascinating talk and fascinating program for all of us. We really appreciate you, despite what you had to say about us and spending your time. We really appreciate you coming here. I'm afraid we're out of time for any more questions, but our next program will be March 28th, where we will have Dr. Bill McClure speaking to us about the International Humanitarian Plastic Surgery for Children in Southeast Asia. So we look forward if you can come back March 28th, and thank you all again for coming.